We're here at the gravesite where they're going to finally bury the soldiers. A lot of people out here. I'm going to have to be cutting my phone off because in a minute, I don't have a 29% battery. So
I don't have a blue one. Purple? We have this blue one. Now, if I give these to y'all, y'all cannot spill them or squirt them at people, okay?
Once revolutionary enemies, now inseparable allies. Our gathering here today also reflects South Carolina's continued commitment to recognizing and championing the service of her veterans. Veterans of all of America's conflicts across all of America's 3 centuries of democracy. Today's assemblage also exemplifies the deep local commitment to a culture of service and recognition by community groups and leaders here in Camden and elsewhere across the state. The efforts of the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust and the American Battlefield Trust continue to highlight the critical strategic role this state played in the American Revolution as they worked together to create the Liberty Trail, a physical and historical linkage of our state's dozens of Revolutionary War battlefields. Each of these locations saw American patriots and their equally committed British adversaries commit their very lives to their respective causes, and fought and he died to further their nation's objectives. So too do today's veterans, the current embodiment of patriot fervor, sacrifice much for our continued freedom. A nation and a people who commemorates its veterans from a 2-century past must most assuredly support its veterans of today, those whose service and sacrifice has such contemporary impact. That is certainly the pledge of the South Carolina Department of Veterans Affairs and the great state of South Carolina. We make that today, and we will maintain it in the future. So thank you for gathering here today to honor these fallen warriors from so many years ago, and thank you for your continued commitment to supporting today's veterans across this great state and our nation.
Germany and France to serve on this battlefield, and we're fortunate today that we have delegations from both countries in attendance with us. Gentlemen, if you would rise and accept the appreciation of our audience. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you His Majesty's British Consul in Atlanta, Rachel Galloway.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Governor McMaster, General McCaffrey, thank you for your moving remarks. I'm delighted to be back in your state. As you may know, the UK and South Carolina have a strong relationship that today is vibrant and looks to the future as partners. Thank you to all the armed forces personnel present today, gathered here at this centuries-old battleground. We have representatives from the South Carolina Army National Guard, from the United States Army, and from the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Regiment of Scotland. Thank you all for your service to your countries, and thank you for being part of history today. I would also like to thank the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust for inviting me to be part of this ceremony. It's an honor, and it is a privilege to be here as His Majesty's representative in the southeastern United States. It's also personally important for me to be here Throughout my career, I've served alongside the United Kingdom, the United States, and other NATO forces. In Afghanistan, I saw firsthand their courage and dedication as they fought shoulder to shoulder in the response to 9/11. And in North Macedonia, it was an immense honour to see military and government partners work so closely to strengthen the NATO alliance, with North Macedonia's accession as the 30th member state. During all of this, I have witnessed the danger our servicemen and women put themselves in to ensure the security of our countries. I know the sacrifices they've made to defend democracy and the rule of law around the world. The United States matters to the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom matters to the United States. Even though we are here at a place of conflict between us, nowhere is more powerful in illustrating the deep and enduring connection between our servicemen and women who train together, fight together, and die together. From conflict came unity. The wounds of the Battle of Camden, of the Revolutionary War, have long since healed, and our two nations are trusted friends and allies. The special relationship embedded in everything that we do together will continue to be vital to international peace and security, and the many political, economic and cultural opportunities that are able to flourish because of that security. You may be aware that Britain is preparing for the coronation of our new king, Charles III. This moment gives us the opportunity to reflect on our past. This place where we stand today is part of that past, and the Revolutionary War is a seminal part of our shared history with America. I want to personally thank the Camden Burials Project and everyone involved for the full military honours afforded to this British soldier. The respectful reinterment of soldiers of whatever loyalty and from whatever era of history is so important. Soldiers killed in battle deserve to be laid to rest with dignity. Today we can say that we have done this for these soldiers, these men and boys who stood here centuries before us. We honour the ultimate sacrifice they have made for both the old nation and the new.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll try to be brief, but I want to pay tribute to these men. Please bear with me. They've waited over 242 years. Before you, in these simple wooden coffins, oh, by the way, the wood that these coffins crafted were from 60 to 80 years old at the time of the battle. These coffins hold the mortal remains of soldiers of the American Revolution. Throughout history, soldiers have endured and shared the hardships of service. Heat and cold, rain, thankfully it didn't rain on one today, fighting insects, boredom and terror, hunger and thirst, and in the extreme, like for these before you, blood, pain, and death on the field of battle. Soldiers also have characteristics that are an inherent part of those who serve in uniform. It is their collective and individual commitment and dedication, hope and faith, comradeship and loyalty, and also in the extreme, like for these before you, sacrifice for one's friends and country. These men and boys, but they're boys only in age, were and are soldiers. And today we gather to acknowledge and honor their service and sacrifice with the dignity that fate denied them over 242 years ago. Fate brought these soldiers here all far from home, and fate determined that they remain here in this hallowed ground of this pine forest in shallow, unmarked graves to face eternity. Before us, the soldiers in these coffins are just some of the casualties from the Battle of Camden. Casualties are the tally of human cost of battle. It is an accounting, a box score for warfare. Though it gives us a means of assessment of the outcome of a battle, we lose sight of the humanity those numbers entail. Statistics are numbers without life or breath. These 13 soldiers are not statistics. They lie before us not as an excerpt of history, but they are tangible and real. They represent the other 400 plus soldiers spread across this hallowed ground, hidden and unknown to us under a few inches of earth in unmarked graves. Such a number is hard for our human minds to imagine and process. But you can visualize those who remain here. Look at the vast expanse of tall pine trees to your front. Each one of those trees represents a soldier in an unmarked grave on this battlefield. They symbolize the scope of loss experienced on both sides. Those who remain are soldiers still, then and today. We acknowledge and honor them all for their sacrifice. Of the 13 soldiers before you, one fought for king and country. He was likely a non-commissioned officer of the 71st Regiment, Fraser's Highlanders, who Lord Cornwallis committed late in the battle to seal the great British victory. But fate is a fickle thing. This soldier likely fell in the final organized resistance of the 1st Maryland Brigade. Bitter fate it was to fall so close to final victory. But on a battlefield where many unmarked graves were very shallow, this soldier's grave was different. It was deeper than the rest, and the Highlander was perfectly laid out in his grave. He was honored and dignified with a proper burial. One can envision soldiers of the 71st Regiment gathered around the grave in the early morning mist, the smell of gunpowder still pungent in the air, their heads bowed, giving final respects to a leader, a brother in arms, and a friend. His pewter enlisted sword belt buckle and 71st buttons and the dignity of his burial speak to us today about the honor given to this unknown non-commissioned officer. For those interred in this hallowed ground, both of our nation and for those who fought for king and country, we wish them to know that time has healed these wounds from long ago. America is no longer divided between patriots and loyalists, but is one nation, and Great Britain is our staunch ally. Before you also are the mortal remains of 12 Continental soldiers of the Maryland, Delaware, or North Carolina lines. They were identified by the pewter USA buttons found in their shallow graves and the locations in which they were found across the battlefield. For 9 of them, their identification as Continental soldiers included the presence of fired British musket balls with their remains. Of the 2 soldiers found to the northwest portion of the battlefield, fate determined that they would fall so close to escaping this battle. They were in lone graves. One was over 40 years old, likely a senior NCO or officer. Seems likely that this soldier did not even have the dignity of a shallow, unmarked grave. The other soldier, likely in his late 30s, was found along with a few rounds of his own .69 caliber ammunition and the tip of a Charleville bayonet scabbard. Besides these artifacts, which defined the side for which he fought, was also the British musket ball that killed him. Fate decided that both of these men would remain on this field of battle. But fate determined that the other 10 Continental soldiers would not be alone in death. The unenviable task of burying the dead fell to the soldiers left on the field of battle. Bare hands and bayonets were the basic tools to loosen the dirt and dig in the early morning heat. It is likely that those burying the dead included prisoners forced to bury their comrades, though the British likely buried their own, as evidenced by the care of the Highlanders' grave. The difficulty of digging, compounded by the numbers involved, led to many soldiers occupying a common grave. Together in life, together in death. On the side of the battlefield where we are today, the Continental soldiers of the 2nd Maryland Brigade and the Delaware Regiment under Baron DeKalb fought about 300 yards south of here. There, close to each other, are two shallow graves. One held the remains of 2 Continental soldiers, each over 20 years old. The other held the remains of 3 Continental soldiers. They were all teenagers, one as young as 15 years old. In that grave was also a rusty tin cup, the handle broken off. It was likely used as a tool to help dig the grave, and is now an artifact that tells the story of these soldiers' burial. These boys, fighting as men on the field of battle, far from home and their mothers, died together. They made a sacrifice that would not earn liberty for themselves, but for others. Boys, young men, soldiers, friends in life that fate placed together in death in a shallow common grave that day over 242 years ago. On the east side of the battlefield, a grave held 5 more Continental soldiers. They were likely from the 1st Maryland Brigade, or perhaps a company of North Carolina Continentals fighting with Lieutenant Colonel Hal Dixon's unit. They desperately fought to keep the veteran British regulars from getting through them to strike Baron DeKalb's exposed flank. We can imagine these soldiers in combat, outnumbered, surrounded, fighting back to back until they fell in the smoky early morning darkness. 2 of these soldiers were teenagers, between 16 and 19 years old. For keeping count, yes, that's 5 out of the 12 were teenagers. 2 were likely in their 20s, but it was also the old man in the group, who was perhaps as old as 40, perhaps their sergeant, leading them till he fell. The sacrifice these 5 soldiers made on 16 August 1780 and their burial in an unmarked grave was their fate. But their fighting to the end against great odds allowed for the escape of many veteran Continental troops for whom fate provided other chances. These soldiers, who survived Camden in part through the sacrifices of others, later fought other battles. Cowpens, Guilford Courthouse, Hobkirk Hill, 96, Utah Springs, and were there to accept the surrender at Charleston. Those who fought for independence in the Southern campaigns of the American Revolution included those soldiers who fell at Camden. They provided the decisive resistance from 1780 to 1782 that won the liberty and the independence of our great nation. Now, fate intervenes once more. The fate that brings us here is to honor these soldiers who fell in battle in these pine woods 242 years ago. As we reverently acknowledge the role they played, we recognize that this great nation was not founded solely upon the successes we proudly venerate, but also by the perseverance and resilience that followed failure and defeat. To these soldiers we say, fate has dictated that you will not be forgotten in an unmarked shallow grave, but you now, in marked graves, recognizable to all for the role you played, represent the remembrance of all for whom fate has placed in this hallowed ground. God bless your souls, and may you rest in peace. Huzzah!
the left. Hey. Gentlemen, well done. Today we honored our patron ancestors. Today you honored extremely well. Very proud of you, very happy to be here. Thank you all for coming. Order, colors, order, fire line. Good job, good job. Dismiss.
All right, if you got the Georgia colors with the balls on the ball, ball will make you fuck up.
And that's going to do it for this episode. These last 2 days, we've been coming to for the funeral of the soldier. And we've been coming down here for this the wake yesterday, and then the soldiers been burial today. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit your notifications where you'll be notified where I upload videos just like this. And remember to love God, love others, and reach the world. It's a bonus feature. This is how many people was here today. It's a crowd. There's a lot of people here. It was an enjoyable weekend.